Hey, welcome back to Ground Zero Salem. As always, I'm your host, Pat. It's time to talk about what's been happening so far in 2024. Nothing important, just music. I don't want to talk about anything else that's gone on in 2024. This is going to be one of those halfway through the year stuff that I've been enjoying so far kind of videos. I had the revelation to do this like a month and a half ago, thinking for some reason it was an original idea. I don't know. I think it's just my brain going soft over the years. Like everybody does these. There's a bunch of these out already. A few people beat me to the punch. I see Mike Seatown's put one out, and there's a few others floating around. Always cool to see, to check in on what releases have come out. If you know my channel, you know I'm into primarily extreme metal and hardcore. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Feel free to hit that subscribe button if you so choose. Extreme music for extreme people is primarily what I talk about on here. I've been leaning a little bit more towards crusty stuff and D-beat the past couple of years. I don't know if that's just due to the fact that one of the better punk record stores in the country is within driving distance of my house, and that's a lot of the stuff that they peddle as far as their wares go. Could be that I just over time get burnt out on certain things. Like I always really liked New York hardcore stuff, and I love the stuff that I have now, the classic stuff. I don't know how much more I need of stuff that is kind of borrowing from late 80s, early 90s New York, so I'm exploring more international hardcore stuff and D-beat and that kind of stuff. Death metal, the pondering kind of doomy death metal stuff, I'm good with what I've got on that. You know, I'm leaning more towards gore grind. I think this pile is kind of representative of that. Yada yada yada. You know, this is the stuff that I've been exploring this year so far, and it's not a ton of stuff. My buying habits I'm trying to curb down a little bit, starting to clear out a bunch of my collection. Not a ton, but there's just so much stuff that I have doubles of. I have on multiple formats, stuff that I know I'm probably never going to listen to again. I've managed to clear out. It was up to one tote last update. I filled out 2 totes and several boxes. You probably won't see any of the stuff up for sale for a while just because time's a commodity with me, working full-time and everything. But maybe in like 3 weeks to a month or so, you'll start seeing stuff in the distro. Probably sell some more expensive stuff on eBay. Haven't decided yet. Probably won't sell stuff on Discogs just because it seems like a convoluted pain in the ass. And that's pretty much it with that. So we'll go through with formats here. Gonna do tapes, then CDs, then LPs, then reissues. As the kids say, let's go. Oh no, kids say, let's go with a bunch of O's. Let's go, okay. Black Sorcery from Providence, Rhode Island. Cool little 3-song demo here. Plummeting into the Hour of the Wolf. I originally checked this band out because my friend Mark joined this band playing bass, and I always support what he does because he's a good dude. He quit this band. Tape is still good though. It's just raw black metal stuff, you know, second wave, like all kind of good raw-ish black metal stuff, kind of second wave style stuff. This is excellent in that you can pick up more and more with repeated listens, pick out more nuances and stuff like that, more riffs. Very harsh and scathing, as it should be for this style of stuff. Very well executed. Of course, links will be in the description for all this stuff down here if you want to support these artists. Check out the stuff yourself. And we've got Rut Morbid Thoughts. Sort of grind, sort of crust kind of stuff. Very kind of death metal-ish vocals. Weird, disturbing kind of sound clips between the songs. Some of the songs that are in the mix harshly a bit louder than the music. They're very like cutting into your ears kind of thing. I think that was a stylistic choice on purpose. Yeah, like pretty abrasive, grindy kind of music. A little bit on the loose side, but not like falling apart or anything like that. Great pounding drums, great death metal-ish style vocals. Not taking itself too seriously. The drummer is billed as playing kegs and legs. And they have like their likes and dislikes, almost like it's a personal section. Likes frogs, cold Mickeys, etc., etc. Yeah, kind of fun stuff, tongue-in-cheek, not taking itself too seriously, which, if done right, can be a good time, which I think that's well executed. Then you got Fright, the new Fright Cesspool, Nate Wilson project. Nate was in Devoid of Faith, Monster X, Das Oath, and a few more. Ran Gloom Records. This is on Gloom Records. He mostly puts out his own releases now, but put out a ton of great hardcore in the late 90s and early 2000s. this is killer crossover stuff. I like their last EP. I think I still might have a few copies in my distro if you want to check it out. Cool crossover because it doesn't necessarily sound like anybody else. It's not like they're trying to ape Cryptic Slaughter or Crumbsuckers or something. It seems to have a bit of a Japanese influence going on. I don't want to let the fact that Sugi did their logo to like influence that, but if people like Sugi enough to commission the guy to do artwork for them, they probably really like Japanese hardcore, and it's probably going to show through their music somehow, if you know what I mean. But yeah, pretty singular sounding, thrashy crossover stuff. Very venomous, kind of scathing vocals and stuff. Very, very good. Then from local merchants, Bunker Punks, Discs and Tapes. A couple of the guys from Scarecrow run this label, put out great releases. This is Absolut from Canada's latest tape, Kang Monk Demo 2024. Absolut's a band that's been around for a grip. They've been around for like over a decade, I want to say. They had a split with Paranoid. They had like a 7-inch, a couple other things. Really cool band. Certainly borrowing from that sort of Scandinavian hardcore stuff a lot. I feel like with this release, they've gone significantly more metal. Really inhuman vocals that are almost sort of death metal, but like these roaring, slightly affected, like a little bit reverby kind of vocals that just completely blanket everything. They sound totally monstrous. Awesome. Really good, like shredding metal elements with solos and stuff. It's almost like they take the spiritual influence from the metal punk stuff, like Broken Bones or whatever, and just apply it in a totally different way. Not doing a worship sound or trying to replicate it, but letting it influence them in a manner that's not immediately detectable, if that makes any sense. Very, very good. Moving on to CDs, we got Stress Angel from New York. I like this because I like early Midnight. I like early Bathory. I like that sort of black rock and roll stuff. Hell Ripper is okay, you know, but it's nice to hear a band kind of involving that sound with something that's just serious and isn't like this sort of hokey, check out these ladies in leather bras or whatever, you know, like I just burnt out on a lot of that stuff, you know what I mean? I like anything that's very like influenced by Motorhead and early Bathory and Venom. Like that's definitely my bread and butter. I've talked about it on this channel extensively, but Stress Angel is just clearly not messing around, and I like that a lot. It's very venomous. It's very scathing. It's very, for lack of a better term, first wave black metal. But it's just very, very almost inhuman in a sense, and that's a very hard thing to pull off, to remain in both of those spheres. Great stuff. Similarly, we've got Nekrofilth with Ngung. This is cheating a little bit. This came out on Dementia? Shadow Kingdom? It came out last year on a European label, the vinyl. This was put out by Nameless Grave this year. This is the EP. It's just 4 songs, and 2 live sets of like all their classic material. Nekrofilth is a band I've been a fan of for a while, for about a decade, if not more. Their demo, Worship Destruction, is one of my favorite recordings. It's an album-length demo. It was repressed on vinyl. That is like one of my favorite modern death, extreme metal, whatever you want to call it, releases in the past decade and a half or so. They've got a lot to live up to because of that. Their last full lengths, the ones that came out on Hells and everything, were good. I like them. Devil's Breath's good record, but man, that Worship Destruction though, like way up there. Like it's almost next to Horrified for me for recordings that sound like that. This is kind of going back in the direction. I think their last couple of records were great, but just kind of lacked the piss and vinegar of that one. This is really nasty. I'd be curious to hear more songs. This is just like 4 new studio songs and a bunch of live stuff. Really gross, nasty, like Repulsion, Slaughter style stuff. But getting back to the anger of their earlier stuff a little bit more. But again, not a diss towards anything else. All their recordings are good. Then we've got Dissimulator, Lower Form Resistance. This is a really cool ode to, I want to say like Canadian technicality, but more so the old school stuff, like Voivod and DBC, as opposed to Gorguts or something. It's musically like weird technical off-kilter thrash, but the vocals are death metal. When the riffs aren't going all weird and mathy, they lapse into these like really mean like mosh riffs, and it's awesome. It's really, really well executed. Good stuff. Then we've got Pentagram Chile, Eternal Life of Madness. I did not know Pentagram from Chile was still at it. I think they had that Malefice record 10 years ago or something like that. And yeah, I did not see this coming. This is awesome. This is really, really good. It's mostly a mid-paced affair owing a ton to Celtic Frost and Metal Blade era Slayer stuff. Really evil riffs, more or less death metal kind of vocals. Very insidious and satanic. It's awesome. This is one of the best of the year, easily for me. Then we've got Necrot, new Necrot, Lifeless Birth. I really wasn't that impressed with the last album by Necrot. I liked them live. They had like they did a whole bunch of demos. There was one of them that I really liked, and then that was kind of it for me. It kind of like fell into that morass of like a lot of the new school, old school death metal stuff after a while. Kind of Autopsy, kind of early Cannibal Corpse, maybe some European influences, whatever. This has all that, but it's just I feel like the songwriting's just taken a big step up. There's just a lot more hooks and engagement for me with the riffs in this. They managed to mix the slow and fast really well, not reinventing the wheel like a lot of bands like this don't do, but like on top of it, it's just really well done. So good for them. I like this record a lot. Then we've got Morgul Blade, Heavy Metal Wraiths, Philly band. Unlike Stress Angel, this band's very kind of along the same lines, but very tongue-in-cheek, very like fist in the air, we are metal kind of stuff. It doesn't bother me that much because the music's so good. Super catchy. The title track is definitely like, horns in the air, boys, like that kind of thing, but it's just really well done. Great riffs, great songwriting. I can overlook the kind of silliness, We've got Brodequin, Harbinger of Woe. A friend of mine was like, yeah, I mean, it's just as good as their old stuff, and you can hear the guitars, which I think is pretty appropriate. I think a lot of this band's sound is kind of, defined by their insane drumming. I believe it was their original drummer that did permanent damage to his spine from the way he was sitting in his throne, the way he was holding his sticks when he was blasting. It's so blast-driven and so crazy. Occasionally lapsing into, slamming parts. It's just really well executed, brutal DM that's been around forever. But this is awesome because, yeah, the production is great, and it's not clinical sounding. It doesn't sound like a computer's doing it either. It's got a certain earthy, analog feel to it, but it's just, the guitars are just turned up in the mix, and everything sounds great. You can actually hear how good the riffs are. It's awesome. You've got the new Hemorrhoid, Raw Materials of Decay, featuring Disgustor from Necro Drunks and Headsplit Records, playing drums on this. It's a power trio. Just really well-executed gore grind. I've been feeling a lot of gore grind lately. These guys do it especially well. There's all the sort of, markers of gore grind on this, the early Carcass influence. They tend to mix it up well enough where it's not just aping everything else that's come before it. There's a lot of cool slow parts on this, I found, like the few almost kind of doomy moments that kind of set it apart from the pack, like very disgusting sounding. Love that cover art. Really good. Some really great song titles, as you would come to expect. My favorite probably being Dante's Fecal Inferno, track 10. Stool-borne Illness, Sliced and Tucked. I mean, maybe I like this stuff so much because I'm a medical professional. I don't know. Then we'll do vinyl. Got some 12 inches here. We've got 99 to Life by Woodstock 99. Woodstock 99 are really cool. They, like a lot of their peers, like the Illiterates and Electric Chair and bands like that, they take a lot from 80s hardcore. There's a certain kind of, like, not jangly, but minimally distorted practice amp kind of, like, fuzziness to their guitar approach. You can find a similar guitar sound on like the Year and 7 Inches stuff from Discord, that really early hardcore punk, when hardcore punk were synonymous and connected, that kind of sound. I like Woodstock 99. They tend to think outside the box. It sounded like their last record had a little bit more of like weird, almost 90s alternative influence in certain moments, like almost like, I don't know enough about that stuff, but maybe some Dinosaur Jr. thrown in randomly. They're trying to do something different. This goes into some weird directions instrumentally. There's an instrumental on this that like goes into some like, synths, I think. Almost kind of starts sounding like Dead Can Dance for a moment, like in the midst of all this like scrappy hardcore stuff. But great band. They're awesome live. I got to see them at the Sorry State Fest that happened in the fall. Really cool band from Cleveland. Beach Impediment Records put this out. This is the Public Acid LP. Mini LP, maybe it could be considered. It's only 8 songs. It's pretty short. Deadly Struggle. Great record, man. This is on... That's a cool color. It's translucent, kind of purplish marble. That's pretty. Vinyl might be pretty. Music's nice and ugly. Reminds me of some of my favorite things out of hardcore. The Life's Blood 7-inch, Corrosion to Conformity stuff early on. Animosity in particular. The kind of weird hot mic, sort of distorted mic sound. There's a lot of feedback on this. There's a certain noisy, almost like Italian, like wretched kind of thing going on with it, sort of. There's some cool gallops. There's some real meaty riffs. I'd say there's something for almost everybody that likes any kind of hardcore in this. It's just really well done, nasty hardcore stuff. Members are kind of spread out all over this whole area. Members are up in Richmond as well as here in Raleigh, and I believe there's somebody in Asheville. Guys playing a bunch of other bands. Jeff is also in Scarecrow. He's one of the guys that runs Bunker Punks, so total support. Really, really good stuff. Then we've got Rotten, formerly Rotten UK. I don't know what the deal is with that, if they decided to just go with Rotten again, or I don't know. James, what are you doing? You're confusing me. I've known the vocalist for this band for a very long time, and he's always been really into the aesthetic. He's always been into really looking cool. What's nice, though, is that the music matches this. It's very well done. Their previous LP, which also came out on Hells, was really good. It was very goth, I feel like, very goth punk. Like you could say it was almost like a spiritual successor to stuff like The Screaming Dead and UK Decay and stuff like that. Maybe a little bit of like Part 1, Rudimentary Peni, that too. This has that in spades. It has plenty of that influence still. But they've woven in a lot more UK 82 stuff, like a little bit more like kind of horror epics exploited maybe, and some metal punk as well. There's a little bit more like metallic soloing on it. There's a few moments that definitely remind me of Amoebics. So it's a well varied, kind of well-rounded record. Age of Chaos by Rotten. It's really good. I've been listening to it a ton. New Pist record. Did not see that coming. Pleasantly surprised about that. Pist has risen. If you're an old fogey like me and grew up getting into punk and hardcore in the 90s, you might be familiar with Ideas or Bulletproof, which was the Pist's debut LP, only LP up until this point, I believe. Great record, just full of venom towards the establishment and hunters, and just every single song was a diatribe with Al Pist going off about something that made him angry. And they're more mature. I think they're all in their 50s now and everything, but it's still speaking truth to power, towards a lot of different topics on this, not shying away from being political. An ode to their friend Jim Martin, which is like kind of like a fun like oi song, which I did not see coming, which is great. Jim Martin's a good dude. Was a roadie for Nausea and played in Broken in a bunch of bands, so that's cool. Really sounds good, really well produced. This came out on Havoc and Profane Existence. Back together again, doing releases together. Awesome. Great release. Good punk stuff. Got the Planet on a Chain LP here. Culture of Death. This is a band that's been hard at work with releases. This might be their third album. There's definitely one before this that's also really good that came out not that long ago. This came out on Rev. Features Dave from Tear It Up, Dave It Up, as he was known. Dave Ackerman. Great dude, great vocalist. And as far as I know, he's still in Austin, and the rest of the members are in the Bay Area. A quick cursory search on the internet told me that anyway. The other members were in bands like Look Back and Laugh and California Love and a bunch of others. Everybody's a seasoned vet, and this is snarling, fucking angry, fast as hell hardcore. Not blast beat fast necessarily, more like insanely fast, like 4/4 beats. lapsing into almost D-beat parts, maybe a little bit here and there. Great creepy crawl kind of breakdowns. Dave's vocals are kind of the same ilk as a little bit as Snarler's, you know, like Ray of Today, the guy from Antidote, maybe Rabies a little bit, but more just like, just really mad. Not nearly as annoying as Ray of Today. Sorry, everyone. Just gonna throw that out there. Yeah, just great vocalist, great frontman. Just killer music all around. Really well produced. Great drum sound on this. The drums sound amazing. Super pounding. Then Sentinel, Age of Decay. Vocalist for this band is a guy named Ace Stallings from Virginia, who put on the United Blood Fest for years now. Does a really cool podcast called Forum of Passion. And this is I did not know that this band was going to be this metal. I had their demo from a couple of years ago. I really liked it. And I know that this is kind of from the same soil musically and culturally that, like, I don't know, Power Trip and Foreseen and Enforced, who are also from Richmond, kind of come from, with like dudes that might be from more of a hardcore kind of background, playing their own interpretation of metal. But this is really well done. I'd say the vocals have sort of a hardcore tinge to them, but everything else is very, very respectful of its influences, which to my ear is a lot of Motorhead kind of stuff, a lot of like the Big Four's debuts, like namely, especially Kill 'Em All and Killing Is My Business, a lot of that kind of stuff. There might be some kind of more metal-leaning Japanese hardcore influence going into this, but it is a really well-written record. Also a little bit of a cheat on my part. This came out December 23rd, 2023, so it's technically last year's release, but I don't think it was really in anybody's hands until 2024, so I just wanted to mention it because I think it's great. It's a great record. Nice looking vinyl, too. This is great. This came out on Convulse Records, who, to my knowledge, put out mostly hardcore stuff. Going back to Profane Existence, we got the new Swordwielder, which also came out last year, but didn't hit domestic markets until 2024. Swordwielder, Wielding Metal Massacre. Profane Existence again, does it again. They've been at it. I feel like they weren't really doing that much for a while. They moved to Pittsburgh from Minneapolis, and they've just been killing it with the releases the past couple of years. Great, long-standing Crust label. Swedish band, huge love letter to classic Stench stuff, namely Axe Grinder and Amoebics mostly, but maybe some Zygote. Gloomy, foreboding, mid-paced, kind of gallopy, awesome Crust stuff. Very foreboding Axeman at the edge of the moor kind of deal. If you like that stuff, you're not gonna go wrong with this. Don't expect like grindcore. Don't expect, or even like bolt thrower worship or anything. This is very, very much traditional Stench Crust kind of stuff. Got a couple of reissues that I'm pretty stoked on. Speaking of Stench and Crust and all that kind of stuff, one of the best to do it, Nausea from New York. They deserve the mantle of New York hardcore as well as Crust. They were very important in that scene at the time. They were kind of the ambassadors for this kind of sound, playing alongside bands like Agnostic Front. Amy was married to Roger at one point. I've mentioned that before. Musically, this band were a powerhouse. I mean, their drummer, incredibly talented guy that went on to be in huge bands, including Soulfly and Stone Sour and stuff. Roy Mayorga. Cool mix of like the kind of gloomy elements of Amoebics, the fast parts of Discharge, maybe some Sacrilege and UK and Contra Pater thrown in there. Awesome, occasionally almost sort of tribal drumming. Great face-melting guitars, courtesy of Vic Venom. Just awesome stuff. Vic Venom was one of the OG punks that was like into metal back in the early 80s in New York. He was known as that because he had a Venom back patch, which was like not an acceptable thing back in the hardcore days, so props for that. Yeah, just a great band, and it's great that Svart did them justice by reissuing the Cyber God and Lie Cycle 7 inches on 1 LP. They've been remastered by Jack Control. Thing sounds massive, sounds awesome. Hopefully their other stuff will get reissued at some point. I know that the Extinction LP had some pressing issues even back in the day. I had it on 12 inch and it had surface noise and all these problems. And I guess a bunch of pressings had that issue. The CD sounded pretty good. And a bunch of their stuff got reissued on the Punk Terrorist Anthology Volumes 1 and 2, which was like a 2 CD and I think 4 LP reissue that's long out of print and expensive now. And it also, I mean, it sounded okay, but like the layout was kind of ugly and stuff. So hopefully Svart will pick up the other stuff as well. I hope. I would think so, you know, because the LP is a killer too. Very, very good. Yeah, this is a little bit more direct and to the point. I want to say the LP gets a little bit more like, a little bit more spacious, a little bit more drawn out and kind of doomy and stuff. But all of it's good. Nausea New York, man. Nausea LA, also great. And then Wrong by No Means No. Killer Canadian, post-punk, post-hardcore stuff. Put out by Alternative Tentacles back in the day. Also put out by Alternative Tentacles, it looks like here. Virus 77. Kind of emblematic of Jello Biafra's decision to put out stuff other than hardcore on his label pretty early on. You know, from the mid-'80s onward, he put on a lot of experimental and weird kind of bands. No Means No were probably one of the best that he did, but he put out early Neurosis as well, and bands like Steel Pole Bathtub and all this crazy stuff. These guys were very bass-driven. In other people's hands, their style could have been like terrible, like funk punk or something, but they were just so oddly erratic and idiosyncratic in their approach to music. Guy definitely played with his fingers with the bass, but there's all these off-kilter rhythms and very weird stuff. It's hard to even really explain it with mouth words. You kind of have to listen to it yourself, but it's very technical, very accomplished musicianship, very cool. It had the energy of hardcore and punk, but it had this weird kind of like Residence kind of thing, you know, or like Frank Zappa kind of mentality to the music they wrote, which I thought was really cool. I like this one a lot. I also like Small Parts, Isolated and Destroyed. The later stuff didn't really do it for me, but this had a lot of the energy on it that I really came to appreciate. I feel like they were one of those bands in the mid-'80s, along with like the Big Boys and the Minutemen, where they were really, really good at the stuff that they played, and they had a really accomplished bass player. And then finally, won't take up any more of your time after this, let you go. The Oppressor, Solstice of Oppression CD. I just grabbed this. Classic Chicagoland, brutal death metal. I feel like when a lot of people talk about Chicago, they think about these bands like Massacre and Scepter and all this stuff that's a little bit more hesh, you know, a little bit more like straightforward, you know, early death metal when it was still kind of intertwined with other genres. Oppressor were a band that were like more along the lines of early Suffocation and stuff like that. Brutal death metal before it got silly. Very technically accomplished, really, really well done. And I bought this. I have an original pressing of it, but I purchased this because it has demos on the other CD that sound really, really good. Their World Abomination demo and As Blood Flows demo. So great classic brutal death metal stuff, and all their stuff is getting reissued by Hammerheart very soon. This was the first one to drop, though. All right, good stuff, everyone. I will hopefully be back sooner than later, kind of clearing my recent purchases from last year. At some point, I have a big pile of black metal that I'm going to try to talk about, even though I listen to tons of black metal. I like black metal a lot, but I never know what to say about it. You know, I can talk at length comparing different types of hardcore and different influences. When it comes to black metal, I just feel like an idiot. So if anything, you'll get to have a laugh at my expense. So that'll be fun. Well, that should just about do it for now. We'll see what I talk about next. It's anybody's ball game, really. I don't know. Have a good day, evening, night, whatever. Take care. Bye.